Chapter 8. Pots and Pans. After the war, Picasso and Francois moved to the town of Valoris in southern France. They lived in an old perfume factory with room for a sculpture studio. Their two children were born in Valoris, a son, Claude, in 1947, and a daughter, Paloma, which means dove, in 1949. There was also a pottery factory in town. Picasso began working with the potters, making and decorating ceramics, plates, and vases. At first, he just decorated pieces made by the potters, but soon he was making pottery himself. His designs were happy and playful. At home in his studio, Picasso worked on amusing and childlike sculptures. They were made from things he found around the place, and so the pieces were called found art. At a junkyard, Picasso saw a bicycle seat and handlebars lying next to each other. He welded them together, and suddenly they looked exactly like a bull's head. For a sculpture of a woman pushing a baby carriage, Picasso used parts from a real baby carriage and cake pans. Some of his sculptures would make you laugh. For an ape, Picasso used a toy car for a face, a car spring for a tail, a jug for a body, and coffee cup handles for ears. He made a sculpture of a goat out of flower pots, a basket, and palm leaves. Pablo was now a happy family man. He spent time with his children, teaching them to swim, playing and drawing with them. He seemed to have found peace in his life. But did it last? No. Chapter 9. Busy to the End. In 1953, when Picasso was 71 years old, Francois left him. He couldn't believe it. No woman had ever left him before. He had always been the one to call it quits. Francois took the children with her. That was a huge blow to Pablo. His friend, the artist Henri Matisse, died a little while later. Another blow. But leave it to Picasso to find romance again. He met a woman, Jacqueline Roque, at the pottery factory. She was devoted to him until the day he died. They got married when Pablo was 80 years old. Pablo and Jacqueline lived in luxurious houses in southern France. Picasso painted pictures of his studio and of Jacqueline. He did at least 150 portraits of her. He did a group of pictures called the Artist and Model series, and he kept experimenting and exploring. Picasso said, "I have less and less time, and yet I have more and more to say." One of his projects was to look at old masterpieces by other artists, such as the Spanish painter Velázquez, and translate the paintings into his own style. Picasso seemed to be trying to understand the history of art by redoing it in his own way. By now, there were shows of his art all over the world. He was such a celebrity that it was hard to have any privacy. He and Jacqueline moved to a secluded villa in the hills of southern France. His villa had electronic gates and guard dogs. Even his own children had trouble getting in to see him. On his 85th birthday, museums in Paris honored Picasso with shows of his work, 1,000 pieces in all. And still Picasso kept working. Even at 91, he was experimenting. He started making linoleum block prints. He also made a new kind of sculpture with painted sheet metal. He would still turn out 3, 4, or even 5 paintings a day. Sometimes it seemed as if Picasso would go on forever. However, on April 8th, 1973, Pablo Picasso's heart finally gave out. The doctor by his bedside heard his last words. You are wrong not to be married. It's useful. That was Picasso, surprising to the end. Several museums are now devoted to his art, including one in Barcelona and one in Paris. He left behind a huge body of work. There may be as many as 50,000 pieces, but it is not the quantity of art that boggles the mind. It is his genius that is so amazing. How could one man have so much energy? How could one man come up with so many new ideas? How could one man have lived so fully? Picasso's gift to the world was his art, but he also showed how a creative life could be when lived with energy, originality, and passion.